Hey guys, and welcome back. This is week 3 of going through Ecclesiastes, and today I will be talking about Ecclesiastes chapter 5 and chapter 6. And the kind of theme that will be guiding us through these books is caution before God or caution before the Lord. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. I will read Ecclesiastes 5, 1 through 7. Just a second here to organize my notes. Alrighty. Caution in God's presence. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Better to approach in obedience than to offer the sacrifice as fools do, for they ignorantly do wrong. Do not be hasty to speak, and do not be impulsive to make a speech before God. God is in heaven and you are on earth, so let your words be few. Just as dreams accompany much labor, so also a fool's voice comes with many words. When you make a vow to God, do not delay fulfilling it, because he does not delight in fools. Fulfill what you vow. Better that you do not vow than that you vow and do not fulfill it. Do not let your mouth bring guilt on you, and do not say in the presence of the messenger that it was a mistake. Why should God be angry with your words and destroy the work of your hands? For many dreams bring futility, so do many words. Therefore, fear God. So it's kind of be careful what you say, hold your tongue, and know the importance of honoring God. So it is important to honor God, and we can honor God by making vows to him, right? Like a marriage vow. And these vows can be very pleasing to God, but you have to have much caution in that, right? Don't make vows you can't fulfill. We must live by God's standards, and to live by his standards, we have to live up to what we vow to him. So we've got to be very careful, and we can't just, verse 6, do not let your mouth bring guilt on you, and do not say in the presence of the messenger that it was a mistake. So we can't just back out of it later on. So just listen and know with absolute certainty that you are going to fulfill this vow before you say it. Listen before you sacrifice, essentially. So, fear God. All right. Moving on to verses 8 through 17. The realities of wealth. If you see oppression of the poor and perversion of justice and righteousness in the province, do not be astonished at the situation, because one official protects another official, and higher officials protect them. The profit from the land is taken by all. The king is served by the field. The one who loves silver is never satisfied with silver. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is futile. When good things increase, the ones who consume them multiply. What, then, is the profit to the owner, except to gaze at them with his eyes? The sleep of the worker is sweet, whether he eats little or much, but the abundance of the rich permits him no sleep. There is a sickening tragedy I've seen under the sun. Wealth kept by its owner to his harm. That wealth was lost in a bad venture, so when he fathered a son, he was empty-handed. As he came from his mother's womb, so he will go again. Naked as he came, he will take nothing for his efforts that he can carry in his hands. This, too, is a sickening tragedy. Exactly as he comes, so he will go. What does the one gain who struggles for the wind? What is more, he eats in darkness all his days, with much frustration, sickness, and anger. So, this kind of ties back to chapter 3, right? The oppressor and the oppressed have no peace. Wealth kept by his owner to his harm. So wealth could help out the worker, right, as it lays out in verses 8 through 12, how the wealthy keep the worker from sleep. But the wealth kept by the wealthy also harm themselves. So to kind of restate that, wealth doesn't satisfy you. You desire more when you are wealthier. So just because you have more doesn't mean that you're going to be fulfilled, right? Wealth isn't fulfilling. And that's the reality of wealth. Wealth brings anxieties and trouble. I don't know exactly, but I know there was a famous rapper that said, "Mo money, mo problems." Yeah, I quoted that right. Anyways, so having a lot of money isn't going to solve all your problems. I mean, obviously, there's like money to get by and money to live, but abundance and excess is just that. It's abundance and excess, and it isn't going to bring you fulfillment in your life. And material possession over spiritual gifts leave you unfulfilled. So yeah, wealth isn't everything it's cracked up to be, guys. Finishing off the chapter here, verses 18 through 20. Here is what I have seen to be good. It is appropriate to eat, drink, and experience good in all the labor one does under the sun during the few days of his life God has given him, because that is his reward. Furthermore, everyone to whom God has given riches and wealth, he has also allowed him to enjoy them, take his reward, and rejoice in his labor. This is a gift of God. For he does not often consider the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. So, enjoy wealth by giving to God, right? Furthermore, everyone to whom God has given riches, he also allows them to enjoy them and rejoice in his labor. So we can enjoy our wealth by helping those who are less wealthy. And by wealth, I don't just mean like money possessions, right? Like all of us have talents and gifts. So to help people that aren't as talented or gifted as us in like specific areas. Pursue holiness, not riches. It is impossible to be content when our hearts are set on gaining more. Verse 20, right? For he does not often consider the days of his life, because God keeps him occupied with the joy of his heart. So that right there is kind of a tell to later how the author of Ecclesiastes explains like the meaning of life, right? God is keeping us occupied with the joy of our hearts, so we can't like consider the crushing like despair of death and of evil and wickedness, and we aren't called to that. We're called to the eternity. So be glad and not constantly reflecting. Reflection is important, but that shouldn't be the like default state of our hearts. So we should have gratitude and joy and experience good in all the labor one does under the sun, because that is our reward from God. So yeah, Ecclesiastes 5. Fear God, be cautionate before him, and experience his goodness, and you'll have a good life. So not as depressing. All right, moving into Ecclesiastes 6, verses 1 through 6. My apologies. Here is a tragedy I have observed under the sun, and it weighs heavily on humanity. God gives a person riches, wealth, and honor so that he lacks nothing of all he desires for himself. But God does not allow him to enjoy them. Instead, a stranger will enjoy them. This is futile and a sickening tragedy. A man may father 100 children and live many years. No matter how long he lives, if he is not satisfied by good things and does not even have a proper burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For he comes in futility and he goes in darkness, and his name is shrouded in darkness. Though a stillborn child does not see the sun and is not conscious, it has more rest than he. And if a person lives 1,000 years twice, but does not experience happiness, do both not go to the same place? All of a person's labor is for his stomach, yet the appetite is never satisfied. So, given much but never getting to enjoy it is unfair. We lose our spiritual perspective when we wish to never be born. So, as the author Solomon is going through like tragedies on the earthly scale, we have to understand that we're called to the spiritual level, right? Like our calling isn't to dabble in these things that are unjust and tragedies in the short term, because we're going to be eternally with God. Let's see here. Yes, and that also ties back to earlier in the book when he talks about wishing to have never been born. And this is a theme that comes up in Job a lot also, where Job doesn't curse God, but he just wishes that he had been born instead of going through all this tragedy in his life. So, Ecclesiastes 6, verses 8 through 12. What advantage then does the wise person have over the fool? What advantage is there for the poor person who knows how to conduct himself before others? Better what the eye see than wandering desire. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. Whatever exists was given its name long ago, and it is known what mankind is. But he is not able to contend with the one stronger than he. For when there are many words, they increase futility. What is the advantage of mankind? For who knows what is good for anyone in life, in the few days of his futile life that he spends like a shadow? Who can tell anyone what will happen after him under the sun? So this kind of goes back to the successor, or picking a successor, and how the wise king and the foolish king and the wise young man. God is in control, and this means that we can live courageously. And verse 9, 6-9. Better what the eye see than wandering desire. This too is futile and a pursuit of the wind. So chasing for the sake of chasing is hevel, right? It's a pursuit of the wind. It isn't important. It isn't relevant in our lives. Verse 7 there, all of a person's labor is for his stomach, yet the appetite is never satisfied. That kind of ties back to the materialism of the first half of the chapter and of chapter 5. So understanding like materialism and earthly treasure isn't what's in store for us, and that the reality of wealth is it can be a very lonely and depressing thing. The last thing that I kind of want to leave with is go back to Ecclesiastes 5:10, because it to me is very important and very crucial and kind of ties all of it together. The one who loves silver is never satisfied with silver, and whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is futile. So it's how much is enough, right? If we're chasing and we get something, then we're just going to chase something else. And that's not how we should live. We should live for God. Money is a powerful and dangerous tool. It can be used to build up orphanages and churches, but it can also be used to turn us away from God. So it's important to understand that. We are too caught up with monetary value and like wealth when money is equal to security, success, or happiness, or any of those, maybe all of them, right? If money is any of those things in your life, then you are too materialistic, because these things should come from God. And materialism and chasing of these earthly things just really leaves a hole in our hearts, guys, right? Like if we're chasing after not necessarily money, because I know most of us are teenagers and money isn't really the main goal of our life. But if we're chasing after like grades or like girls or whatever it is, that's just going to leave a hole in our heart that should be occupied by God. So yeah, that is Ecclesiastes 5 and 6. I will be going through 7 and 8 next week. It's a little bit later, but yeah, very important, and I had this on my heart. So thank you all. I'll see you next week.